Helena adjusted the last strand of hair in her elegant bun, observing herself in the mirror framed by an Art Deco design that adorned her luxurious suite. The reflection she saw was a true spectacle of sophistication, a long red silk dress, which hugged her perfectly, highlighting her curves. The soft light from the lamp highlighted the shine of the jewelry that adorned her neck and wrists, diamonds, pearls, and a delicate gold bracelet that her late father had left her. She had always believed that adornments told more about her story than words could, and at that moment she was ready for another chapter of her glamorous life. "Helena, you need to decide on shoes." Joanna, his assistant, hurried in, holding a box of designer shoes. The young woman had a worried look, as if the responsibility of the world were on her shoulders. "The gala starts in less than an hour." "Calm down, Joanna. I'll go with the Louboutins. They're perfect for this occasion," replied Helena, smiling as she picked up the red high-heeled shoes. "What about the decorations? Is everything ready?" "Yes, the decoration team is already on site and the service provider you hired is very competent. His name is Marcelo, isn't he?" Joanna said, while helping Helena put on her shoes. "That's right. He looked very promising at our meeting," Helena commented, admiring her reflection once again. "I hope he does a good job." Joanna nodded, but her gaze wasn't just focused on the decoration. "I just hope you checked his references. The world is full of people who may not be what they seem." "I trust my contacts, Joanna. The security of my home is not a concern. Now, let's hurry. I don't want to be late," Helena said, with a confidence that reflected years of experience at high-profile social events. The path to the event was marked by a mixture of anxiety and excitement. The luxurious car cut through the illuminated streets of Sao Paulo, and Helena observed the city lights as if they were stars in a galaxy that she had always dominated. Upon arriving at the place, the atmosphere was full of well-dressed people, laughter, and lively conversations. The gala was one of the most anticipated of the year, and she knew that all attention would be focused on her. As he walked through the room, greeting friends and acquaintances, his eyes fell on a young man arranging flowers on a table. He had dark hair, an enigmatic smile, and a look that seemed to penetrate your soul. It was Marcelo, the service provider. He was so focused on his work that he didn't notice the attention he was attracting. Helena felt a sudden curiosity, as if there was something more behind that smile. "Who's that?" Helena asked a friend who was next to her, waving at Marcelo. "Ah, it's Marcelo. They say he's great at what he does. But why are you so interested?" The friend smiled, noticing the change in Helena's tone of voice. "I don't know," Helena replied, quickly looking away. "I think it's just the way he works. He seems passionate about what he does." "Or in love with you," the friend joked, winking. Helena laughed, but the truth was that she couldn't take her eyes off Marcelo. He moved with a grace and determination that intrigued her, and for a moment she lost herself in thoughts of the life she led, surrounded by people who often seemed more interested in her possessions than the woman she was. The gala continued, with speeches, toasts, and dancing. Helena enjoyed herself, but her mind often wandered to Marcelo. The way he arranged the flowers, with an almost artistic care, made her think about how many times she hadn't allowed herself to appreciate the little things in life. That night was more than just a celebration. It was a reminder that, even surrounded by luxury, there was something missing. When the party finally began to disperse, and the guests began to say goodbye, Joanna found her. "Helena, we have to go. It's getting late." "One moment, Joanna," Helena said, deciding to approach Marcelo before leaving. "Can I talk to him?" "Of course, but don't take long," Joanna replied, with a look that betrayed her concern. Helena walked towards Marcelo, who was removing the flower arrangements from the table. "Hi, Marcelo," she said, smiling. "You did an amazing job. The decor was stunning." "Thank you, Helena. I'm glad you liked it," Marcelo replied, his smile widening. "It was a pleasure to work here." The environment is magical. You were so focused I almost couldn't take your eyes off your work, Helena commented, a hint of playfulness in her voice. You really love what you do, don't you? Yes, it's true. The art of transforming spaces is something that fascinates me. Each event has its own energy, and I like to capture it, Marcello explained, his passion evident in every word. You have an incredible talent. Maybe we can talk more about that another time, Helena suggested, feeling an inexplicable connection with him. That would be great. I'm at your disposal, Marcello said, inclining his head in a friendly gesture. Helena smiled. A mix of satisfaction and uneasiness invaded her. She said goodbye to Marcello and turned to Joanna, who was waiting for her at the entrance. Come on, we have to go, the assistant insisted. As soon as they arrived home, Joanna did not hesitate to address a subject that worried her. Helena, you should really think about increasing the security of the house. With all these contractors coming and going, it's risky. Joanna, I trust the people I hired. Marcello seems to be a good professional. I watched him work and he is competent, Helena replied, trying to calm the assistant. But do you know him well? He could be anyone, Joanna insisted, her tone now more serious. I don't want you to put yourself at risk. I appreciate your concern, but I'm not ready to live in fear. Life is too short for that, Helena said, determined. And besides, he's just a service provider. Joanna sighed, but didn't seem convinced. Just be careful, please. You know how the world is. Helena nodded, but in her heart, something had changed. The connection he felt with Marcello at the gala wasn't just curiosity. It was as if he had awakened something inside her that had been dormant for a long time. And as she prepared for bed, she found herself thinking about him, about his enigmatic smile and the promise of a more vibrant future. The story was just beginning, and Helena's life, like her reflection in the mirror, was about to change in unexpected ways. Helena woke up to the soft morning light filtering through the silk curtains of her luxurious apartment in Jardins. The smell of fresh coffee invaded your senses, and a slight smile formed on your lips as you remembered the previous night's event. The gala was a success, but what intrigued her most was the presence of Marcello, the service provider who had taken care of the decorations. His enigmatic smile and intense eyes remained etched in her memory, as if they had connected on a deeper level, something she couldn't explain. Good morning, Helena. Joanna, his assistant, entered the room with a stack of documents. You have a meeting with the architect at 10, and then you need to review the new vendor contract. Good morning, Joanna, Helena replied, still daydreaming. Would you mind calling that boy Marcello? I'd like him to do some renovations in the living room. He has good taste. Joanna raised an eyebrow, surprised. Do you want me to hire Marcello? The gala decorator. Yes, that's right. He has a special talent, and besides, he seemed like a good person, Helena said, feeling a slight blush on her cheeks. I think he can bring something new to the house. Of course, if that's what you really want, Joanna replied, a little hesitantly. She knew that Helena used to be cautious around strangers, but her boss's insistence made it clear that something was changing. Helena spent the day involved in her duties, but the idea of Marcello never left her mind. When he finally arrived at her house to start work, Helena felt a mix of anxiety and excitement. He entered, with a calm that contrasted with the turmoil of his heart. Good morning, Helena, Marcello greeted, his smile lighting up the room. I look forward to seeing what we can do together. Me too. I just hope you won't be disappointed when you see the room, she replied, leading him into the room. I think she needs a touch of life. Absolutely. A little color and a few pieces of art and it will be perfect, Marcello said, as he took in the white walls and sophisticated furniture. I can imagine some options that could transform all of this. During the day, as they exchanged ideas, Helena found herself sharing more about her life than she really intended. Conversations about travel, trauma, and even moments of happiness flowed between them as if they were old friends. Marcelo listened to her attentively. The understanding in his eyes encouraged her to open her heart. "Sometimes I feel like I'm surrounded by people, but I still feel alone," Helena confessed, looking out the window, where the city pulsed with life. "It's ironic, isn't it? Wealth doesn't bring happiness." Marcelo smiled, but there was a sadness in his eyes. Loneliness is a companion that many of us know, regardless of what we have. Life can be lonely when we don't have someone to share our dreams with. Helena turned around, surprised by the depth of her words. "You understand me in a way that few others can." "What do you do, Marcelo?" "I do a little bit of everything. I'm an artist and, at the same time, a service provider. I'm always looking for the next project, the next inspiration," he replied, his voice soft but with a touch of vulnerability. "What about you? What makes you happy?" Helena hesitated. The question took her by surprise. I don't know. Sometimes a good conversation like this is what I crave most." The day passed with laughter and productive work. As the sun began to set and shadows danced across the room, Helena realized that she had forgotten her cell phone in the living room. "Excuse me for a moment, Marcelo. I need to get something." When he returned, he found Marcelo standing, admiring a photo of his family that was on the table. It was an old image of a family event, everyone smiling. The gesture left her intrigued and somewhat uncomfortable. He hadn't mentioned anything about his family, and that photo seemed like a glimpse of something deeper. "Sorry, I didn't mean to invade your privacy," Marcelo said quickly when he realized she was there. "The photo is beautiful. You look very happy." Helena forced a smile, but her heart was racing. "Yes, it was a simpler time. I had other concerns." "It's funny how memories can be both comforting and painful at the same time," Marcelo commented, his tone more serious. "Sometimes we need to remember what we were to understand what we want to be." "You're right," she replied, feeling an inexplicable connection form between them. "What about you? Do you have photos like this that make you feel connected to the past?" Marcelo hesitated, and she could see the battle unfolding in his mind. "Yes, but they're not always good memories. Sometimes the past can be a prison." This moment of vulnerability left Helena even more intrigued. What would have happened in Marcelo's life for him to speak that way? Curiosity consumed her, but at the same time, a protective instinct arose within her. She wanted to know more, but feared what she might discover. "I'd love to see your photos someday," Helena said, trying to ease the tension. "I think we all have fascinating stories to tell." "One day, who knows?" Marcelo replied, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "For now, let's focus on making your room look stunning." As night approached, Helena and Marcelo continued to work together, creating a light and welcoming atmosphere. But as the hours passed, the feeling that something was about to change hung in the air. What she felt for him was more than just attraction. It was a connection that transcended their everyday realities. When the day came to an end, and Marcelo said goodbye, Helena felt strange for wanting him to stay a little longer. Their time together had been refreshing, and for a brief moment she had forgotten the loneliness that accompanied her. "See you tomorrow, Helena," Marcelo said, his voice soft as a breeze at night. "I look forward to seeing what we can create together." "See you tomorrow," she replied, watching him leave. When the door closed behind him, the room seemed emptier than before, and the loneliness that had dissipated for a few hours returned to envelop it. She sat on the couch, looking at the photo of her family, now from a different perspective. Life was full of nuances, and in that moment, Helena began to realize that maybe, just maybe, she was ready to let someone into her world again. Helena watched the soft morning light enter through her large windows, reflecting on the glossy surfaces of her apartment in Jardins. The aroma of fresh coffee filled the air, and she allowed herself a moment of appreciation for the little things that life of luxury afforded her. However, a feeling of uneasiness began to arise in her heart, an emotion that she could not identify. Everything has changed since Marcelo, the service provider, started working in his house. Helena didn't know if it was his ability to transform spaces or the way he made her laugh that left her so intrigued. As Marcelo installed new shelves in the room, he turned to her, a tool in his hand and a mischievous smile on his lips. "You know, Helena, if you let me, I can transform this room into a space that will make you feel like you are in an art gallery." Helena laughed, holding up an art book she was leafing through. "What if I don't want to be a simple spectator? What if I want to be the artist? So I'll let you be the artist, but I promise I'll help create the best exhibit," he replied, winking. The way he looked at her made her stomach turn. It was a mixture of awe and a connection she couldn't explain. In the following days, the attraction between them intensified. Helena began to realize that the loneliness that accompanied her in her glamorous life was softened by Marcelo's presence. Joanna, her assistant, noticed this change. One morning, while Helena was having breakfast, Joanna entered the kitchen with a worried expression. "Helena, you look different. I don't want to be nosy, but I need to ask, do you really trust Marcelo?" Joanna's tone was serious, and Helena felt butterflies in her stomach. "Of course I trust Joanna. He is talented and gave me no reason to be suspicious. And besides, he makes me feel alive again. Don't you see that?" Helena replied, trying to hide the frustration in her voice. Joanna crossed her arms, a gesture that Helena knew well. "Just be careful. You know how treacherous the world can be. And I care about you." Helena rolled her eyes. "You worry too much. I'm an adult woman, Joanna. I can take care of myself." The tension between the two was palpable, but Helena didn't want to let Joanna's opinion affect her growing affection for Marcelo. That night, he decided to invite Marcelo to an intimate dinner. "I wanted to get to know him more deeply, understand his motivations and share a little more of herself." During dinner, the atmosphere was light. The food was delicious, and laughter flowed naturally between them. Marcelo was telling a funny story from his childhood, and Helena felt at home, as if all her worries had disappeared. "Did you know I used to make bird traps in my grandmother's backyard?" Marcelo said, laughing. "Once I trapped a bird, and I was so sad that I let it go. Since then, I promised I would never do that again." Helena watched him, her eyes shining. "Have you always had this kind heart? It's a rare quality, especially in the world we live in." Marcelo paused for a moment, his expression changing. "In truth, no. I came from a rich family, with all the perks. But we lost everything and, well, it made me realize that material things aren't what really matter." Helena felt a wave of empathy. "I understand. Life can be cruel. Sometimes what seems perfect on the outside is just a facade." "Exactly," Marcelo replied, his gaze deepening. "And you, Helena? What hides behind all those jewels and smiles?" She hesitated, but the connection between them was too strong to ignore. "Sometimes I feel more alone than you can imagine. Wealth doesn't fill the void that exists here," she said, pointing to her chest. "People often approach me because of status, and that's heartbreaking." Marcelo leaned in, as if paying attention to every word. "So maybe we're more alike than you think, huh? Two lost souls trying to find a way through it all." Helena smiled, feeling a growing connection. But at the end of dinner, as he helped clear the table, something shattered the serenity she was experiencing. Helena's cell phone vibrated on the table. She picked up the device and saw an anonymous message that left her paralyzed. "Be careful with Marcelo. Your past is darker than you realize." The message hit her like a punch in the stomach. She looked at Marcelo, who had his back turned, arranging the cutlery. The confidence he was beginning to build faltered, and a whirlwind of questions invaded his mind. Who was he really? What did that warning mean? "Helena," Marcelo called, turning to her. "Everything is fine?" She hesitated, her mind confused. "Yeah, just something I read." "Is nothing." He seemed to realize something was wrong, but didn't insist. Tension hung in the air as Helena fought the distrust that was beginning to take root in her heart. The words of the message echoed in his mind, and with each passing moment, Marcelo's image seemed to transform from a charming service provider to a stranger shrouded in mystery. After the meal, Helena decided she needed some time alone to think. The attraction to Marcelo was undeniable, but the anonymous message left her uneasy. She walked away a little, going to the balcony, where the view of the illuminated city calmed her. The cool wind caressed her face, but the feeling of freedom was overshadowed by the shadow of doubt that was beginning to hang over her. "Helena, are you okay?" Marcelo appeared at the balcony door, concern showing on his face. "I noticed you became distant." She took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. "I'm just thinking a little. Sometimes all of this can be overwhelming." Marcelo approached, his presence comforting. "If you need someone to talk to, I'm here. You don't have to carry this alone." "Thank you, Marcelo. It's just, I have a complicated past, and the idea that you might have one too, it makes me nervous." His look made your heart race, but distrust still hovered like a dark cloud. "We all have our secrets, Helena. The important thing is what we do with them now," he replied, his gaze piercing. The connection between them was palpable, but the words of the message echoed in his mind. Helena was lost in her thoughts, trying to decide who she could really trust. Dinner had been a revelation, but now, what was a promise of intimacy was turning into a game of uncertainty. Helena sat in her velvet armchair, the soft light from the lamp casting dancing shadows on the walls of the luxurious apartment she called home. The silence of the house enveloped her, but it couldn't shake the restlessness that had settled in her heart since the last anonymous message she had received. The word "secret" echoed in her mind, and the image of Marcelo, the service provider who had entered her life like a cool breeze, occupied her thoughts. What was he hiding? What else could there be behind his enigmatic smile? Helena took out her cell phone and, hesitantly, began searching for information about it. He immersed himself in endless research, browsing social networks and forums, but information was scarce. What she knew was that Marcelo had an undeniable talent for what he did, but his curiosity insisted on going beyond artistic skills. "Why did he appear in my life now?" he thought, while the image of Marcelo, with his intense and penetrating gaze, never left his mind. Meanwhile, Joanna, his assistant, entered the office with a worried expression. "Helena, are you okay?" he asked, his trembling voice revealing his anxiety. "You have been so distant. What is happening?" Helena smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I'm just thinking about some things, about work, about life." The answer, although true in part, was not enough. Joanna, always perceptive, was not fooled. "You know I'm here to help, right? This Marcelo, he may not be who you imagine." "Joanna, you are being exaggerated. He is just a service provider. You yourself saw how well you worked at the party," said Helena, trying to dispel the doubts that were beginning to arise in her mind. But Joanna didn't let herself be shaken. "What if he's not just a service provider? You can't ignore the fact that he appeared out of nowhere and is now in your house. These things aren't usually simple, Helena. Be alert." Helena took a deep breath. "I understand your concern, but I trust my instinct. Marcelo is different. He's not like the others." And in his mind, the idea that Marcelo could be something more than a simple worker began to mature, like a flower that slowly blooms. However, Joanna's restlessness did not leave her. She decided to investigate on her own. Meanwhile, Helena continued to remember her interactions with Marcelo, the way he made her laugh and took her out of her bubble of loneliness. Each conversation revealed a little more of their essence, and the vulnerability they shared seemed to weave an invisible bond between them. That afternoon, while Helena was organizing some documents, something unexpected caught her attention. While cleaning the table, she found a small framed photo, partially hidden under a book. When he took it out, he immediately recognized the event, a charity gala held years ago. In the image, Marcelo was present, in the background, but clearly visible, with a smile that shone under the party lights. How was he here? She muttered to herself, her mind buzzing with questions. Her heart raced when she realized that Marcelo had a connection to her past, even if she didn't know what it was. She took out her cell phone and, with the photo in hand, decided she needed to confront him. What does this mean, Marcelo? He thought, as the need to clarify the situation became increasingly urgent. Later, when Marcelo arrived for another day of work, Helena welcomed him with a smile that disguised her uneasiness. Marcelo, do you remember that charity party we were at? I found a photo of you there. Marcelo's eyes narrowed, and he seemed to hesitate. Ah, yes. I was there, but I wasn't very active. Just a guest, you know. You didn't tell me you were there. Why didn't you mention it? Helena's tone was more inquisitive than she intended, but curiosity guided her. I didn't think it was relevant, he replied, looking away for a moment. In fact, life has taken me down unexpected paths since then. Helena felt as if a veil was being lifted, but Marcelo's answer did not satisfy her. But you were there, Marcelo. That means our lives have crossed before, and I didn't know. Sometimes the past can be complicated. There are things we would rather leave behind, he said, with a seriousness that made her feel butterflies in her stomach. The depth of the answer made her reflect on what she really knew about him and what he could be hiding. Meanwhile, Joanna, who had walked away to give space to the moment, returned to the office with a determined expression. Helena, we need to talk. I can't stand here idly by while you get involved with someone we don't know well. Joanna's tone was firm, but there was genuine concern in her voice. Joanna, I'm not getting involved with him. I'm trying to understand. He's a good person, and I feel like he needs someone, Helena replied, but the uncertainty in her own voice made her hesitate. What if that good person is someone who is just trying to take advantage of you? Think about the people you've already met, the pitfalls that may exist. Life is not a fairy tale, Helena, Joanna insisted, her expression stern. Helena crossed her arms, reflecting on the assistant's words. But what if he's just trying to rebuild his life? We all have our demons, Joanna. You know it. Tension was visible between them, but Helena felt torn. The desire to protect Marcelo and the need to protect herself also tormented her. The conversation, however, was interrupted by a message on Helena's cell phone. It was from an unknown number, and the message simply said, "Be careful with him. What you don't know can hurt you." Helena's heart raced. "Who are you?" he typed quickly, but got no response. The silence that followed felt deafening, and doubt grew in his chest. Who could be behind that message? And why did they want her to stay away from Marcelo? Meanwhile, Marcelo continued to work in the next room, unaware that the storm of emotions was approaching. Helena looked at the photo on the table once again, the connection to the past weighing on her mind. What else didn't she know? What was the truth he was hiding? Between the thoughts and the uncertainties, the only thing Helena was sure of was that she couldn't ignore what was happening. The need for truth drove her to an inevitable and, at the same time, terrifying confrontation. She needed to find out who Marcelo really was and what he meant to her life, before it was too late. The storm was approaching Sao Paulo, with heavy clouds gathering in the sky, as if the universe itself was foreshadowing a conflict. Helena watched from the window of her luxurious apartment in Jardins, the wind whipping through the trees and the first drops of rain beginning to fall. The atmosphere was charged not just with humidity, but with unspoken emotions. She had decided it was time to confront Marcelo. The last few days had been a whirlwind of contradictory feelings. The discovery of the old photo had left him in her mind, like a shadow that followed her. If the service provider, who had made her laugh and feel alive, was closely related to her family, why did he deny knowing her? The questions tormented her, and the need for answers became urgent. With a deep sigh, she took out her cell phone and called Marcelo. "Marcelo, can you come here? We need to talk," she said, trying to keep her voice steady despite the anxiety that consumed her. "Of course, Helena. I'm on my way," he replied, his calm voice bringing a slight relief. When Marcelo arrived, Helena felt a mixture of expectation and fear. He stepped inside, wiping the rainwater from his wet, dark hair, and his intense gaze met hers. The connection they shared was palpable, but the tension in the air was almost electric. "Are you well?" he asked, noticing her worried expression. "Not exactly," Helena replied, crossing her arms. "We need to talk about some things that are worrying me." "Okay," said Marcelo with a slight smile, although the concern in his eyes was evident. "What is happening?" Helena hesitated for a moment, searching for the right words. "I found a photo of you, Marcelo. A photo from a charity event my family organized years ago. And you recognized her, but you said you don't know my family." "Because lied." Marcelo's expression changed, and he seemed momentarily lost in thought. "Helena, I didn't lie. I was there, yes, but I don't know his family personally. I just was there." "That doesn't make sense," Helena insisted, frustration growing. "If you were there, you could have told me. What else are you hiding?" Marcelo took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing. "I'm not hiding anything, Helena. I have a friend who's having financial difficulties, and I'm trying to help him. This situation led me to you, and I didn't want you to know that until we had a genuine connection." "But how does that justify you omitting your connection to my past?" Helena retorted, her voice rising a little. "If you really cared, you would have been honest from the beginning." "I know, and I'm sorry. But I didn't want you to see me differently, to judge me for something that isn't mine. I'm here to help a friend, and this has nothing to do with you." The silence that followed was heavy. Helena looked at the ground, fighting the feeling of betrayal that consumed her. When she looked up again, she saw Marcelo watching her with a mix of concern and desire. He looked vulnerable, and it made her hesitate. What did she really know about him? There was something real in his words, but doubt gnawed at her. "I don't know if I can trust you, Marcelo. The truth is that I have feelings for you. But what if you are just taking advantage of my vulnerability?" Helena said, her voice now softer. "I would never do that," Marcelo replied, his tone sincere. "You are an incredible woman, Helena. I am attracted to you, not your wealth or status. I want you to know that." His gaze was intense, and for a moment Helena was lost in the depth of his gaze. But before he could respond, the storm intensified outside. The wind began to howl, and the rain pounded on the windows, creating an almost isolated environment, as if the outside world didn't exist. "It looks like we're going to have to stay together here for a while," said Marcelo, trying to break the tension. Helena forced a smile. "At least we're not alone." As the storm raged, the conversation took a different turn. They sat on the sofa, and Marcelo began to share some stories from his childhood. Moments of sadness and joy that revealed a side of him that Helena didn't yet know. He talked about his dreams and the difficulties he faced after his family's downfall. "I always wanted to be an artist, but life doesn't always allow us to follow our dreams," said Marcelo, his eyes shining with the memory. "There was a time when I had everything, and suddenly, everything was gone." "And what did you do?" Helena asked, interested. "How did you handle it?" "I learned to fight," he replied, a small smile on his lips. I learned that life is made up of ups and downs, and that you need to find the beauty in the little things, like the simplicity of a drawing or the joy of helping someone. Helena felt a deeper connection forming between them. You are much more than a service provider, Marcello. You have a huge heart. Marcello's gaze softened, and he leaned closer. And you are a strong woman, Helena. Your wealth does not define who you are. I admire your fight and the way you position yourself in the world. The conversation flowed naturally, as if time didn't matter. But, despite the growing intimacy, distrust still hovered over Helena. She wanted to believe him, but doubt still tormented her. As the storm raged outside, a feeling of security began to settle in. The connection between the two seemed stronger than the lies that surrounded it. As night fell, the city lights began to shine through the window, reflecting a beauty that Helena rarely stopped to appreciate. She turned to Marcello, who was watching her with an intensity that made her feel alive. "Do you think what we are building is real?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I want it to be," he replied. "I want you to know that I'm here for you, Helena, no matter what happens." His words touched her deeply, but a shadow of distrust still prevented her from giving herself completely. The storm outside seemed to be a reflection of his inner emotions. And as the night progressed, Helena found herself faced with a dilemma. Trust Marcello and run the risk of getting hurt, or protect herself and lose the chance for something real. The storm continued to rage, and as lightning streaked across the sky, Helena realized that the night unfolding before her could change everything. The morning sun filtered through the blinds of Helena's luxurious apartment, creating a play of light and shadow that danced around the room. She was in the living room, nervous, watching through the window as she waited for what seemed like the inevitable. Joanna, his assistant, came and went, organizing the last details for the day ahead. The sound of her high heels echoed off the polished marble, and the air was filled with an almost palpable tension. When the doorbell rang, Helena felt butterflies in her stomach. It was an unexpected visit, but not just any visit. Joanna opened the door and, behind her, was Marcello, the service provider who had become a constant and intriguing presence in her life. His smile was as enigmatic as ever, and Helena couldn't help but blush a little when she saw it. "Good morning, Helena. I'm here to start the reforms we agreed on," said Marcello, his voice soft and comforting. "Excellent. Come in, please," Helena replied, trying to hide the anxiety that was growing inside her. She watched him as he moved around the room, admiring the sophisticated decor and details that reflected his luxurious lifestyle. As Marcello worked, Helena felt the connection between them intensifying. He was not just a service provider. He was someone who made her laugh and forget the loneliness that often accompanied her. The conversations between them flowed naturally, and Helena found herself telling him about her childhood, her insecurities, and the pressure she felt to maintain the image of a strong and successful woman. "You have such an interesting life, Helena. Sometimes I feel like money doesn't bring the happiness everyone thinks it does," said Marcello, while adjusting a shelf. "And truth. Sometimes loneliness is the hardest part. This world is full of people who are more interested in status than in real relationships," Helena reflected, looking at him with an intensity that surprised her. The day passed quickly, and at the end of it, Helena realized that she had left her cell phone in the living room. When he returned, he found Marcello standing there, admiring a photo of his family that was on the table. He was so absorbed that he didn't notice her presence until she cleared her throat. Marcello turned around, a little surprised, and soon a nervous smile appeared on his lips. "Sorry, I didn't mean to be invasive. It's a beautiful family," he said, with a tone of sincerity that made Helena's heart race. "Thanks. It's an important memory for me," she replied, a little uncomfortable. But Marcello's look was not one of malicious curiosity. It was empathy. This left her intrigued. In the days that followed, the attraction between the two became increasingly evident. Joanna, however, watched everything with a worried look. She tried to be discreet, but she couldn't hide her uneasiness. One afternoon, While Helena and Marcello were in the garden, Joanna decided to intervene. "Helena, I don't know if you realize, but you're getting very involved with him. And he is a service provider. It may not be safe," said Joanna, with an expression of concern. "Joanna, you don't understand. Marcello is not just a service provider. He's different. He makes me feel alive," Helena defended, feeling a little defensive. "But what if he is a scammer?" "You don't know anything about his past," continued Joanna, insisting on her concern. Helena didn't respond. There was something about Marcello that deeply attracted her, and the idea that he could be a scammer seemed absurd, but at the same time, her word echoed in his mind. She decided to investigate more about him. One night, while browsing the internet, Helena came across an old photo of a charity event her family had organized years ago. To his surprise, Marcello was there. He wore an elegant suit, and his smile was as charming as the one she knew. The image made her uneasy, and doubt began to settle in her heart. Deciding to confront him, Helena called Marcello for a talk. When he arrived, there was a tense air between them. She took a deep breath, trying to organize her thoughts. "Marcello, I found a photo of you from a family event. You were there. Why didn't you tell me we knew each other?" she asked, trying to remain calm. Marcello hesitated, his gaze shifting away. "Helena, I didn't know how to explain it. I have been to many places, and meeting you was unexpected," he replied. "You're hiding something from me, aren't you? Why can't you be honest?" she insisted, feeling increasingly frustrated. "I'm trying to protect my family, Helena. I'm not a scammer. I was trying to clear their name," Marcello explained, his voice full of emotion. Before Helena could respond, a thunderous noise echoed through the room. The door opened abruptly, and a group of police officers entered. Helena's heart raced. "Helena Rodriguez?" one of the officers asked, and she nodded, confused and scared. "We are here to arrest Marcello Almeida. He is a fugitive wanted for financial crimes," the police officer announced, and the room was filled with icy silence. Helena looked at Marcello, who was paralyzed. "No, wait. Let me explain," Marcello screamed, but the police didn't listen. Helena felt betrayal invade her chest. "Did you use me, Marcello? Was this all just a hoax?" she asked, her voice shaking. "No. I really care about you. Please believe me. I was trying to clear my family's name," Marcello pleaded, his eyes full of despair. But confusion turned to panic, and Helena didn't know who to trust. It was at that moment that Joanna, who had remained silent throughout the scene, approached, her expression dark. "Helena, I'm so sorry. I didn't want that to happen," said Joanna, with a low voice. "Joanna, did you know that? Did you know he was a criminal?" Helena questioned, feeling betrayed by her assistant and friend. "No, that's not it. I met him before. He was trying to infiltrate your life. I just wanted to protect you. I care about you more than you can imagine," Joanna said, her eyes teary. Helena's gaze alternated between Marcello and Joanna, confusion and pain intertwining in her heart. In the midst of the emotional storm, she found herself faced with a difficult choice. Who could she really trust? The woman who was always by her side, or the man who awakened something she thought she had lost forever? The climax of the revelation left her in a dilemma, and the feeling of betrayal and helplessness enveloped her like a thick fog. As the police led Marcello out, Helena stood frozen, the weight of her decisions falling on her like an avalanche. Did you enjoy today's story? Subscribe to the channel, leave a like, and hit the bell to not miss our upcoming stories. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.